What's up guys, MikeCoco back here, bringing you guys a new video on the new arc that we just got, I think today or yesterday, depending on your time zone and depending on when your game resets. Um, this arc contains what I would like to call the new generation of Mythic heroes because they're vastly different from the old generation, and a lot of them are actually clones of each other. And these 8 are what the lore or story calls the 8 guardians. So I'm gonna go through each of them and I'm gonna give you guys my opinion on who you should pick and pretty much assess the importance of each of these heroes. So I'm gonna go over here first because not all the costumes have been released for these heroes, which is something you should keep note of because in case you don't have any mythic essence left, and you want to pick up a hero with a costume, then you have to pick up one that comes after. So anyways, let's just get on with it. And for tier 0, now tier 0 is what I'm going to be considering the best picks from this box. Tier 0 will contain Daji, where is the next one? Indra, and the last one is Garura. So Daji is pretty obvious. If you fought a Daji in PvP, you know how deadly she is. With the PvP Gladiator skill, it's extremely potent. And the Bewitch is 100% in Infinite Cross, which means that you could potentially crowd control a lot of the opponent's heroes, which is really important. And the skill itself is not too bad for PvE. I know some of the players in the Korean version of the game actually use her in PvE simply because the Bewitch actually is very useful in Abyssal Inferno, even though she's not meant to be a PvE hero, and also because she deals magic damage, which is not exactly common. And as you know, Abyssal Inferno does contain some mobs that are immune to physical attacks, which is why Daji comes into play. But regardless, she is extremely powerful in PvP, so if you're heavily focused on PvP, I would definitely go and get her. Even if you're not that focused on PvP, I would still consider Daji a very good pick. Myself, I'm still deciding whether or not between Daji and Garura, simply because I don't know if the future Abyssal Inferno floors will contain any magic or physical immune mobs, because the setup I have right now is very melee based, which means that I will come up to a wall as soon as those kind of mobs appear. But yeah, Daji is definitely a great choice. Her costume is, I think it was just released today actually, at the recording of this video, but it's not mandatory. I think it only reduces the fury consumption by 50%, which is, I think that's it. Yeah, and it's not a huge problem. I know 250 fury is a little bit more than 200, and it's not great. I mean, 200 would have been fantastic, but because the attack boost lasts for 2 turns and the Bewitch is also for 2 turns, it doesn't necessarily mean you actually have to use her skill every single turn, which is really good, because in PvE, typically you can control the skill usage, so it won't really matter that she's 250 fury. In PvP, that's a little bit of a different story because she's likely going to use her skill whenever she has the fury to do so, but at least in PvE, her costume isn't exactly a necessity. So whether or not you get her costume is pretty much up to your choice. I personally would not recommend it because it's not vital to having her. So yeah. Now the next one is Indra. Now Indra is again tier 0, and the reason why is because there are a lot of very powerful gun users in the game. The most notable one is obviously Gabriel, a monster in PvP and in PvE. More of a PvP based hero because he deals magic damage, but also because he deals an incredible amount of damage, combining the traits of Lucida and Claire into one, and all at the cost of 100 fury at the end of the day, which is really powerful. And that's pretty much why Indra is up there, because she raises the attack for gun heroes by a lot. And this game seems to love gun heroes. We just got Claire's costume today. It's also very, very good because it silences, I think, the entire column for either 1 turn or 2 turns, but it's extremely powerful. And next on has an obsession with gun heroes, so it obviously is a very good choice to pick her up. She is going to be extremely powerful in PvE because she doesn't deal magic damage, which also means that she is somewhat lacking in PvP because all she gets is increased attack and damage done to bosses, which doesn't really help in PvE modes. And I think the costume adds boss damage, I believe. It boosts it from 30% I think to 75%, and also gives her critical damage up to 30% at level 100. So Indra is extremely good for PvE, but not that great for PvP, and that's kind of why I would put her at the very end in tier 0, because the other two picks, Garura and Daji, are actually not terrible in either mode. It's just Indra that is somewhat lacking in PvP compared to the other two. But if you're running a very gun heavy team, I would definitely go for Indra if you focus more on PvE and you don't really care too much about PvP. But definitely a solid pick. It pretty much, again, depends on what your team is comprised of. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Indra. I don't think I'm missing anything else. Aside from the fact that, again, most of her damage comes from the boss damage boost and not from the critical damage, which again is another important trait to note, that she is more of a PvE focused hero. Now lastly, in tier 0 we have Garura, who is my personal favorite, and the reason why is because I have a spear obsession because of Michael, but her skill without the costume is actually not that great. It only deals damage and increases attack and increases damage done to bosses in a column, which is not even an infinite cross at this point. She's good because she increases attack for spear heroes, and obviously Michael is the most notable one. We also have, I think, Lubu, who is the new spear hero. Some people have been playing around with him. I'm not exactly 100% sure how well he works yet, because to determine how good he is actually requires you to have him, because you can't really preview, because preview mode does not have mythic skill enabled. But anyways, spears are extremely powerful. You have Michael, you have Zhao, you have like Rao, and a bunch of other people, Kamau especially. So Garura makes a lot of sense for a PvE based team, because Michael and Kamau are extremely powerful in PvE. Kamau not that great in PvP, but Michael can definitely hold his own, and that's the reason why Garura is also not terrible for PvP, because as soon as you get her costume, her skill becomes an infinite cross with a high chance to stun for 2 turns, which again, it's not 100% proc, but 100% proc would be way too OP, and the majority of her damage actually comes from the critical damage. You can see here that it boosts up to 50%, and damage done to bosses is lower than Indra's at 50%, but the critical damage is much higher, which means that it's not that dependent on whether or not your enemy is a boss or if it's just, you know, a PvP opponent. So that's the thing I like about Garura's skill. And the other only issue is that her skill with the costume becomes 250 Fury rather than 200. I mean, it's a good, decent trade-off, because she goes from a column hitter into an infinite cross. But at 250 Fury, it is somewhat, you know, it's not great. You know, I like 200 is pretty much a sweet spot. But again, same thing with Daji. Because the attack boost and the stun, or crowd control in this case, lasts for 2 turns, you don't necessarily have to use her skill every turn. So that's the very, I guess, important part. And the other thing is that the myth skill increases the attack for spear heroes, which means that it technically also boosts Michael's shield, which means Michael will tank even harder than before. So Garura, I think, is very good if you're running a melee team, especially if you're running Michael and Kamau. And I think she would fit in PvP and PvE, just because of the high chance to stun in an infinite cross could potentially stun a lot of heroes. So yeah, those are the top 3 picks for tier 0. At tier 0.5, I would say it's Nata. The reason why is because she is a magic damage hero. Hits in a cross similar to Indra, but because she deals magic damage, it means that she's a lot better for PvP. The only issue with this is that A, she is a cannon hero, and B, she gets less overall damage increase. I believe her attack boost only goes up to 50%, based on what I'm looking at here, 0.5% per level, and critical damage goes up to 30%, and damage done to bosses is stuck at 50%. Versus Indra, which goes up to 75% attack, it also goes up to, I think, and the damage dealt to bosses also is much higher on Indra's skill. Yeah. 25.5%. Yeah, so Nata's skill caps out at 50%, which is pretty much the problem with her. But otherwise, she trades off the slight attack reduction and damage done to bosses reduction in favor of magic damage, which makes her a lot better for PvP. But again, with the cannon damage range being extremely random, that's pretty much why she's in tier 0.5. Otherwise, I would definitely put her up there with the other 3 tier 0 heroes. And the other issue is that cannons need like the support right now. They are getting revamped, but at this point in the game, they need all the support they can get, which means that you must have had all the cannon heroes already, which is kind of a problem if you missed out on all the other cannon heroes. So that rounds up tier 0.5. It's just Nata herself. And next in tier 1 we have Kubera. Now Kubera's in tier 1 because although his skill is not terrible, it's a 3x3, which means it deals a lot of damage. It also increases critical hit and has an attack boost. The issue here is it's 300 Fury, which is a lot. The other issue here is that I believe his costume adds boss damage, but it's unknown as to what it is right now. I could probably check that and I'll link it in the description. But at this point it's unknown, and because he doesn't have any kind of magic damage or any kind of, crowd control, he's not really that great for PvP. It's simply just pure damage. It weakens healing, but that's not exactly useful in any PvP mode right now. So it doesn't really make sense to put him into PvP, which means that he's pretty much a PvE hero only. And that's my issue with him, because all the other heroes are fairly decent at PvP, except for Indra, which I mentioned earlier, but Indra's skill is just much better. And the other reason is because there's not a lot of bow support in this game. Aside from Kubera, we have Rag, who's the other gun user, or bow user rather, and that's pretty much it for Mythic season. And then if you just look at the legendary or mythic heroes, there aren't too many good bow heroes right now. Husky is good, but he's not good for damage. He's there for support. Who else do we have? Let's see. He's sword. I think we also have like Lu Hua, which is also another bow user. We also have Sarah Pendragon. She's not that great in my opinion. We have Christine, but Christine's more of a PvE hero. And yeah, we have Lu Hua, which is again not that great. I mean, she's good, but she gets outclassed by the gun counterparts. For example, Lady Huang and Lasita. And you also have Dark Avenger Sarah, but again, she's outclassed by Lasita. So pretty much all the bow heroes are weaker than their gun counterparts, which is why there's not much of a point to running bow heroes, because you can just run gun heroes instead and you'll get much further in the game with gun heroes. So that's my issue with Kubera. His skill itself isn't that bad, it's just that there isn't enough bow support in this game. If they somehow release, like, I don't know, a bow version of Michael or something, or a bow Mythic Season hero that has the same level of capabilities as Michael, I could see Kubera jumping up to 0.5 or even tier 0. But as of now, I don't think it's looking good anytime soon, especially since Rag has also been dropping off extremely hard recently. He's pretty much only good in PvE now. In PvP, he's pretty much just like waste, because he doesn't have any magic damage, so he hits extremely weak. So yeah, that's why Kubera's in tier 1, but he does have potential if we see more bow heroes come out in the future. Now, in the, or I guess tier 1.5, second last tier, we have Gandharva. The reason why she's here is because Nexon, I personally think Nexon completely screwed up how she should have been made. Because she's a magic hero, she should have gotten some sort of, you know, magic damage. Or because she's, or what am I saying? She already has magic damage, but she doesn't get an attack boost for tome heroes. All the other heroes I mentioned earlier have an attack up for the corresponding weapon, which is again a reason why I said they're kind of clones of each other. Because if you noticed and was paying attention, you noticed that they all have very similar skills: attack boost, boss damage, and critical damage for 2 turns, and it's just a percentage that varies a little bit. Gandharva is the one of the few that kind of deviates from this kind of formula, but it actually does her worse because tomes aren't extremely known for their damage. They have, I think, the lowest base damage in the game, so having boosted critical damage doesn't really make a lot of sense because her damage is going to be low anyway. She does get critical damage with her costume in the future, and yes, she does follow the same formula for her skill where she gets an attack boost and a boss damage boost, but a tome user is just simply going to deal less damage in PvE modes than a gun user. That's just a fact, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense why they made the tome hero a PvE hero. They should have pulled a similar formula like Daji, where they make her a PvP hero, because if you wanted to use a magic hero, you just get Daji because she's just better. And if you want more damage in PvE, you don't pick Tome, you just pick any other Mythic Season hero. So I don't really see the point of Gandharva. She's pretty much just there, and a lot of other heroes do what she does, except better. So that's my issue with her. And her skill, it's actually not too bad. It's 200 Fury for a cross damage. It's just that A, there isn't enough tome support. B, tomes are just naturally weak, so there's no point in using her as a damage dealer because you might as well use another weapon type hero. So I don't understand the purpose of Gandharva. So that's why she's sitting there, and I don't think she can get up anytime soon. So yeah, Gandharva's sitting at 1.5. The last two, which I think are the most, or not most useless, but the worst heroes to pick from this arc box, are Asura and War God. So if you guys have noticed right now, there aren't exactly a lot of great axe heroes. You have Uriel, who's one of them, and you have Asura and War God. So that's 3 axe heroes in the Mythic season, but they're not exactly popular. How many people actually run Uriel that you see often in PvP or even PvE modes? Not that many. There's only one good axe hero right now, and that's Ella. And that's only because she has that shield and because she's part of the hero combo for Michael. I guarantee you, if Ella was not an axe user, axe would be completely dead. The only other axe hero is Jessica, but she's, I think, a special chance hire, which means it's unreliable to, you know, think about getting her. But because there's so little axe support, and the axe support that we have in the game right now is just so weak, I don't really see the purpose of going for axe heroes, because it doesn't really help. War God, his skill is simply just like a 3x3 version of Garura's skill, except it costs 300 Fury, and you're boosting axe heroes instead, while there aren't exactly that many great axe heroes. So War God, in my opinion, the second War God at least, is like a worse version of Garura, because you're boosting heroes that are naturally less supported. And Asura, again, follows a similar model to Gandharva, where he boosts critical damage for himself. Now, this isn't exactly terrible because axes actually have decent damage, but because axes have very few support, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to pick him anyway, unless you already have someone that boosts axe damage. So, as much as I don't want to say it, axes are pretty much garbage in this game, aside from Ella. So I don't recommend going for either of these two for the arc box if you want to progress in this game. If you want to use them for your team composition, you can go ahead and do that, but I would not recommend them if you want to get further in the game, because I think you could get much further just by picking Daji instead, even if you are running an Axe team. So I think I've covered most of it. Yeah, I think I've covered most of it. Tier 0 is gonna be pretty much Indra, Garura, and Daji. Pretty much pick whatever suits your team combo the best, or pick the hero that your team is lacking. So for example, my team is mostly a spear slash sword team, so I would probably pick Garura, but I would also keep in mind of the fact that because I'm running a melee team, my weakness right now would be immune to physical attacks, which means that I should also consider taking Daji, depending on what other mythic season heroes I have. So if you don't know, basically if you're running a mixed combination, I would just go with Daji, because that way you're not locked into one specific weapon type. So for example, if you're running like some guns and some other weapon type, just pick Daji because she's very splashable. She works pretty much everywhere. But if you want a mythic season hero that specifically works for your one team, then go with the one that suits your team the most. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I am planning to do the costumes. It's just a lot of catching up to do. I'm probably gonna release all the summer ones at once. I already have the video for that. I just need to get that out. But otherwise, I think it's pretty much it. And yeah, so I'll see you guys later. Peace.